Friday night in the quiet suburban neighborhood was supposed to be calm, a time when the streets dimmed and the strict rules of the homeowners association slipped into the background. But for Jamie, the protagonist, this was the one night they planned to break free. After months of suffocating under endless HOA regulations, Jamie decided to throw a small pool party. Just a few close friends, a little music, some drinks, nothing wild. Just enough to remind everyone that sometimes living under a set of rules could be bent. The invitations had been discreet, sent only to trusted neighbors who shared Jamie's frustration. No loud music, no more than 15 people, Jamie reminded everyone, hoping to avoid any trouble. The pool was sparkling under the glow of string lights, the inflatable flamingo bobbing gently in the water. Everything was perfect, or so Jamie thought. As the guests began to arrive, the air filled with laughter and soft chatter. The sun dipped behind the rooftops and the sky faded from orange to deep navy. Jamie's heart raced with excitement. For once, it felt like the neighborhood could be just a little less uptight. But then came the knock. At first, it was subtle. A single sharp tap on the front door. Jamie frowned, glancing at the clock. It was only 8:30 p.m., too early for any of the other neighbors to come by uninvited. Jamie tried to ignore it, hoping whoever it was would leave. But the knocks kept coming, more urgent, more persistent. A creeping unease settled in the pit of Jamie's stomach. Something was off. From the kitchen window, Jamie caught a glimpse of a tall, rigid figure standing by the gate. A woman dressed in a neat blouse and slacks, holding a clipboard and flashing an expression that could only be described as icy. Determination. It was Karen. Karen, the HOA's self-appointed enforcer, known across the neighborhood as the Rule Police. She had a reputation for zero tolerance, for chasing down every infraction, no matter how small, and delivering swift consequences. Her presence was like a dark cloud on an otherwise sunny day. Jamie's breath hitched. Karen wasn't supposed to know about the party. Invitations had been kept quiet for this very reason. The doorbell rang this time, sharp and insistent. Guests glanced nervously at the entrance, the music faltering as tension thickened. Jamie swallowed hard, debating whether to open the door or pretend no one was home. But Karen wasn't known for taking no for an answer. A moment later, Jamie's phone buzzed with a text from a neighbor. "Is that Karen at your place?" Heard some chatter. The circle of trust was breaking. Jamie paced behind the curtains, heart pounding. The thought raced through their mind. What if Karen called the HOA board? What if fines, penalties, or worse were coming? Suddenly, a voice cut through the night, crisp and cold. "Jamie, open up. We need to talk about this party." It was Karen's unmistakable tone, demanding, unforgiving. Jamie hesitated. A million thoughts clashed in their head. Could they reason with Karen? Could they convince her this was harmless fun, not a rule-breaking disaster? Or was this the beginning of a conflict that could change everything? With a shaky hand, Jamie moved toward the door. Outside, Karen stood firm, clipboard. Ready? Eyes scanning the backyard through the windows. The tension was electric. Neighbors peered from behind their curtains, whispers spreading like wildfire. The pool party that was meant to be a small rebellion against HOA strictness was about to collide headfirst with the iron will of Karen, and no one knew how badly things would spiral. Jamie took a deep breath, turned the knob, and opened the door. The night had officially begun. The door swung open, and there stood Karen, her posture stiff and eyes sharp as a hawk's. The clipboard in her hands wasn't just a prop. It was a weapon in her crusade against anything that remotely resembled a violation of HOA rules. The soft murmur of music and laughter from the backyard seemed to irritate her like nails on a chalkboard. Jamie forced a polite smile. "Karen, I wasn't expecting you." Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. That's because you shouldn't be throwing a party without approval, she said bluntly, stepping inside the threshold. I've had multiple complaints already. Noise, guests, pool usage. This is a violation of the HOA bylaws. Jamie's throat tightened. The complaints? How could that be? The invitations had been carefully controlled, the noise kept low. It's just a few neighbors, Jamie said, trying to keep the tone calm. We're being respectful of the rules. Karen's gaze swept the living room, then the glowing backyard where silhouettes of guests could be seen mingling under the string lights. Respectful? She scoffed. The bylaws are clear. No parties after 8 p.m., and only immediate family and approved guests are allowed on the premises. Jamie glanced at the clock. It was 8:45 p.m., the official curfew. They felt a surge of panic rising, but also a stubborn flicker of defiance. Karen, it's just a friendly gathering. We aren't disturbing anyone. Besides, you're trespassing. Here without permission. Karen's eyebrows lifted. Trespassing? I'm here as an HOA official. I have every right. The tension thickened. Guests in the backyard suddenly grew quiet, sensing the confrontation. Jamie's heart pounded loudly enough they were sure Karen could hear it. Suddenly, Karen took a step forward, invading Jamie's personal space. Listen carefully. This party needs to end now. If not, I will be forced to take further action. Fines, legal notices, possibly calling law enforcement. Jamie's pulse quickened. The threat wasn't empty. Karen had a reputation for following through on these threats, and the HOA was known to impose hefty fines that could cripple homeowners financially. Yet Jamie refused to give in without a fight. Karen, Jamie said firmly, I understand the rules, but this is private property. We're not causing damage. I'd appreciate it if you left and gave us a chance to enjoy our night. Karen's lips curled into a cold smile, the kind that made Jamie's skin crawl. I'm not leaving until I'm satisfied that this violation has been stopped. The door behind Karen slammed shut as the wind picked up, sending a chill through the air. It felt like the calm before a storm. From the backyard, a sudden noise distracted everyone. A startled grunt, followed by the unmistakable sounds of scrambling feet. Jamie's eyes widened as they realized the source, the pigs. Jamie's pet pigs, usually confined safely in their backyard pen, had somehow escaped. Without warning, the pigs charged toward the pool area, their hooves thudding heavily on the patio stones. Guests gasped, stepping back, and Karen's eyes narrowed with fury. Before anyone could react, the pigs dove headfirst into the pool, splashing muddy water everywhere. The clear blue water instantly turned murky brown. One pig let out a joyful snort, wallowing happily in the chaos. Karen's face darkened like a thunderstorm. This is an environmental hazard! Damage to community property! Jamie's breath caught. Karen, wait! This is my private pool, not the community pool, and the pigs are harmless. Karen's voice rose, shrill with anger. You're still responsible for damages. This will not stand. Guests exchanged worried looks. The party was quickly shifting from fun to fiasco. Jamie's mind raced. How much worse could this get? Would Karen call the cops? Would the HOA slap down penalties? And most importantly, what would happen next? The night's battle lines had been drawn, and neither side seemed ready to back down. The backyard had transformed from a carefree oasis into a tense battlefield. The muddy pigs wallowed happily in the pool, oblivious to the chaos they'd unleashed, while Karen stood at the edge, arms crossed and eyes blazing with fury. Jamie's guests hovered uncertainly nearby, unsure whether to defend the party or brace for the fallout. Karen's voice cut sharply through the night air. Jamie, you've blatantly disregarded the HOA bylaws. Noise curfews, guest limits, unauthorized pool use. This party violates every single one. And now, you've allowed animals to contaminate the pool. This is beyond negligent. Jamie took a deep breath, trying to steady their racing heart. Karen, I've done everything. I can to keep this low-key. The invitations were limited, the music's volume was down. And this pool is on my property, not the community pool. The pigs are my pets. They didn't intend any harm. Karen shook her head, dismissive. Intentions don't matter. The bylaws are clear. This kind of disruption affects the whole neighborhood. I've already received calls from concerned residents who want this stopped immediately. Jamie's gaze flicked toward the nearby windows. Neighbors were watching, some frowning, others whispering amongst themselves. The feeling of being under a microscope was suffocating. You can't just swoop in like this, Jamie said, voice rising with frustration. If you want to complain, there are formal channels. You don't get to break onto my property and issue threats. Karen's lips curled into a cold smile. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to enforce the rules. You're lucky I'm giving you a chance before escalating this to the HOA board. One more violation, and I'll file a formal complaint that could lead to hefty fines or worse. Guests began to murmur nervously. Jamie's best friend, Lisa, stepped forward. Karen, this is ridiculous. It's a harmless get-together. We're not damaging anything except the pool, and that's Jamie's responsibility. Karen's gaze snapped to Lisa, icy and unforgiving. Everyone is responsible for following the rules. I'm sure the HOA won't take kindly to this excuse. Jamie's fists clenched. It felt like no one was on their side, yet something inside them refused to back down. Fine. Then what do you want me to do? Karen's eyes gleamed with triumph. End the party, now! Clear out your guests, clean up the mess, and prepare for the HOA hearing. I'll be documenting everything. The clock ticked louder in Jamie's mind. They had to decide quickly, comply and surrender the night or stand their ground and risk everything. Suddenly, from the corner of the yard, a loud crash interrupted the heated exchange. One of the pigs had knocked over a garden statue, sending shards of ceramic skittering across the patio. Karen's face tightened with disgust. This is exactly the kind of irresponsibility that threatens our community. I'm taking photos of this for the board. Jamie's anger flared. Enough! You're trespassing and harassing my guests. If you want to escalate this, I'll be calling a lawyer. Karen narrowed her eyes but backed down. For the moment. This isn't over. As Karen turned to leave, Jamie could feel the weight of the neighborhood's judgment pressing down. The once fun night was now a powder keg waiting to explode. Just then, Jamie's phone buzzed with an anonymous message. Be careful. Karen doesn't stop until she wins. A shiver ran down Jamie's spine. The stakes were higher than ever. The pool party had become a fight, not just for one night's fun, but for Jamie's freedom to live without constant surveillance. Would the party end in defeat, or was this just the beginning of a fierce rebellion against the HOA's iron grip? The night grew colder as Karen lingered by the door, her gaze sharp and unyielding. Jamie's heart pounded in their chest like a drumbeat of impending disaster. Every second felt stretched thin, like the calm before a storm's violent arrival. You need to leave, Jamie said firmly, stepping in front of the door to block Karen's path. You've crossed a line. You don't have permission to be on my property like this. Karen's eyes flashed with icy defiance. I'm an HOA official. This isn't just about you. It's about protecting the entire neighborhood. If I don't act now, others will follow your example. Jamie's voice rose, fueled by frustration and a mounting sense of injustice. This is private property. You don't get to show up unannounced and start policing my guests. That's trespassing. Karen scoffed. Trespassing? Don't make me laugh. The bylaws give me the right to enter any property when I suspect a violation. Guests inside the house shifted nervously, whispers floating through the air like drifting smoke. Jamie glanced at them. Some looked sympathetic, others uneasy. No one wanted to be dragged into a legal fight, but no one wanted Karen to dictate every move either. Jamie clenched their fists, stepping closer. You can't just barge in and take pictures. This isn't how it works. Karen's smirk deepened, and she raised her phone, snapping a photo of the muddy pool and the pigs wallowing inside it. documenting evidence, she said coldly. This pool is a mess. It's a clear violation of community standards. Jamie's jaw tightened. The pool is mine, and the pigs are harmless pets. This mud bath wasn't planned, but it's not a crime. Karen's eyes narrowed dangerously. You'll be hearing from the HOA. I've already started the paperwork. The air crackled with tension. Jamie's mind raced. Could this escalate to a full-blown legal battle, a costly fight no one wanted? But they also couldn't let Karen bully their way through their life. Get out, Jamie said through gritted teeth. Now. For a heartbeat, Karen hesitated, as if weighing whether to push further. Then, slowly, she stepped back toward the gate. But just as she reached the threshold, a loud crash echoed from the poolside. One of the pigs had knocked over, a large ceramic planter, shattering it into jagged pieces. Mud splattered across the patio, and Karen's eyes widened with renewed fury. This is exactly what I'm talking about, she exclaimed, raising her voice so the neighbors nearby could hear. Negligence, recklessness, you're endangering our community's property values. Jamie could feel a growing knot of anger and helplessness. Karen, it's a pig. It's not a threat to the neighborhood. Karen shook her head, her voice lowering to a threatening hiss. We'll see what the HOA board thinks. I'm done. Here! She turned abruptly and strode down the driveway, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. The gate slammed shut behind her with a resounding clang that seemed to echo through the neighborhood. Jamie closed the door slowly, leaning against it, as a wave of relief mixed with dread washed over them. The fight wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. They glanced toward the backyard where the pigs continued their muddy romp, oblivious to the tension surrounding them. A text buzzed on Jamie's phone. It was from Lisa. Be ready for the HOA hearing. Karen's not messing around, but we've got your back. Jamie swallowed hard. The quiet pool party they'd hoped for had turned into a full-blown standoff with an enemy determined to crush their rebellion. But deep down, Jamie knew this was more than a fight about rules or muddy water. It was a fight for the freedom to live life on their own terms, and they weren't going to back down. The next days would bring hearings, arguments, and community drama. But tonight the battle lines were drawn, and Jamie was ready to fight. The morning after the confrontation, Jamie woke to an uneasy silence. The house felt heavy, weighed down by the looming threat of the HOA complaint Karen had promised. But what caught Jamie's attention first was the unmistakable sound of snorting and squealing coming from the backyard. Rushing outside, Jamie's breath caught in shock. The pigs, those usually calm, fenced-in creatures, were nowhere near their pen. Instead, they were wildly rooting through the flower beds, leaving a trail of destruction. The fence gate was swinging open, the latch broken. Jamie's heart hammered. How had the pigs escaped during last night's chaos? Before Jamie could react, a sudden commotion erupted near the pool. The pigs, fueled by their newfound freedom, charged towards the water with surprising speed. The party guests, still lingering from the night before, scrambled to get out of the way as muddy hooves pounded the patio stones. One pig dove straight into the pool, sending a huge splash of murky water over the edge. Another rolled gleefully in the wet grass, snorting happily as it flung mud in every direction. The clean blue pool was quickly turning into a swirling mud bath. Jamie's stomach dropped. "No, stop!" they shouted, but the pigs were far too caught up in their muddy joy to listen. Karen, who had unexpectedly shown up again, perhaps drawn by the commotion or still determined to keep watch, appeared on the driveway. Her face twisted in horror and disgust at the sight. "This is an environmental disaster," Karen yelled. "You're damaging the property. This will not be tolerated." The crowd of neighbors who had gathered to watch the spectacle whispered among themselves, some laughing nervously, others exchanging worried glances. The pigs were having the time of their lives, unaware they were the center of a neighborhood controversy that was rapidly spiraling out of control. Jamie darted forward, trying to catch the largest pig before it plunged back into the pool. "Come on, you guys! Enough!" But the pigs had no intention of stopping, gleefully rooting and wallowing, turning the backyard into a chaotic mud pit. Karen pulled out her phone, furiously snapping photos and recording video, muttering about irresponsibility and reckless behavior under her breath. Jamie's frustration hit a boiling point. "Karen, this is my property, not the community pool. You have no right to use this as evidence against me." Karen's glare was deadly. The HOA doesn't care whose property it is when it comes to violations that affect the neighborhood. "You'll answer for this." Suddenly, from the edge of the crowd, a voice rang out. "Karen, calm down. It's just a harmless mess. We've all seen worse at neighborhood barbecues." It was Mr. Thompson, an elderly neighbor known for his no-nonsense attitude. He stepped forward, giving Jamie a nod of encouragement. "Let the pigs have their fun. They're not hurting anyone." Karen's face flushed with anger. "That's exactly the problem. This kind of lax attitude is why the community's standards are slipping." The tension in the yard was palpable. A powder keg ready to explode. Jamie knew the pool cleanup would be a nightmare, but they also saw a glimmer of hope. The pigs' muddy rebellion had shifted the dynamic. Neighbors who'd previously kept quiet were now speaking up, questioning Karen's overzealous enforcement. As Jamie corralled the pigs back toward their pen, they realized this wasn't just about a party or a muddy pool anymore. It was a symbol of something bigger, a fight for freedom, for community spirit, and for standing up against relentless control. And with every muddy splash, the stakes were only rising. The following days were a whirlwind. Jamie's peaceful. Life had been shattered by Karen's relentless pursuit, and now the threat of an HOA hearing hung over them like a storm cloud. The pigs' muddy escapade was still fresh in everyone's minds, and the neighborhood buzzed with divided opinions. Jamie found themselves at the center of a brewing controversy, caught between the iron grip of HOA rules and a growing wave of support from neighbors tired of Karen's heavy-handed tactics. As the date of the hearing approached, Jamie's phone buzzed non-stop. Texts, calls, even anonymous messages urging caution. "Watch your back," one warned. "Karen plays dirty." The weight of it all was exhausting, but Jamie refused to back down. This was no longer just about a pool party gone wrong. It was a fight for the right to live freely, without fear of petty tyranny. On the morning of the hearing, Jamie sat at the kitchen table, nervously reviewing the HOA bylaws and preparing their defense. Lisa, ever the loyal friend, was by their side, offering support and sharp insights. "You've got this," Lisa said confidently. "You know the rules and you know you didn't break them intentionally." Jamie nodded, though a knot of anxiety twisted in their stomach. The hearing was held at the community center where the HOA board, an intimidating panel of stern faces, would decide Jamie's fate. As they arrived, Jamie noticed a small crowd gathered, neighbors watching with curiosity and anticipation. Some offered nods of encouragement, others whispered disapproval. The hearing began with Karen presenting her case, her tone clipped and formal as she detailed every complaint, every infraction, and every muddy footprint the pigs had left behind. Jamie listened carefully, waiting for their turn. When it came, Jamie spoke clearly and calmly, emphasizing their respect for the community and the unplanned nature of the pigs' escape. "I understand the importance of the rules," Jamie said. "But this was not a deliberate violation. The pigs are my pets, and the pool is on my property. I've taken steps to prevent future incidents." Karen shot Jamie a glare, but the board members exchanged thoughtful glances. Then came a surprise. Several neighbors stepped forward to speak on Jamie's behalf. Mrs. Patel, the longtime resident from down the street, shared how Jamie had always been respectful and kind. Mr. Thompson recounted the pig's harmless antics and defended Jamie's character. Even a few of Karen's usual supporters seemed hesitant to push too hard. The board deliberated for what felt like hours. Jamie's heart raced with each passing moment. Finally, the chairwoman spoke. While the HOA rules are important for maintaining community standards, we recognize that this situation was unique. We urge both parties to work together to find common ground. Karen bristled but said nothing. Jamie exhaled deeply. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a start. As they left the hearing, Jamie felt a mixture of relief and determination. The battle wasn't over. Karen's vigilance was unwavering, but the neighborhood's support had given Jamie newfound strength. Back home, Jamie looked at the still murky pool, a reminder of the night that had ignited a fierce stand for freedom. The pigs, now safely penned, snorted contentedly, oblivious to the drama they had sparked. Jamie smiled. No matter what came next, they were ready to fight for their home and their right to live on their own terms. After the HOA hearing, Jamie thought they might finally catch a break. The board's decision had been more lenient than expected, and the neighborhood's whispers had shifted to cautious support. But peace was fleeting. Karen was not one to give up, and the real battle was just beginning. Days passed, and Jamie tried to focus on repairing the damage to the pool and the backyard. Cleaning up mud was messy but manageable. What wasn't manageable was Karen's persistent shadow, lurking at every meeting, every neighborhood event, watching for any sign of trouble. One afternoon, Jamie received an unexpected knock at the door. It was Mr. Henderson, a neighbor who lived 2 houses down. He was an older gentleman, quiet and reserved, the kind of person who rarely involved himself in the HOA drama. "I heard about the hearing," he said, voice low but steady. "I want to talk." Jamie nodded cautiously and invited him in. "I've been watching this whole thing," Mr. Henderson continued. "And frankly, Karen's tactics aren't just unfair, they're borderline harassment." Jamie blinked in. Surprise. "You think so?" Mr. Henderson nodded. "I do, and I'm not the only one who feels this way. There are others who want change, but they're afraid to speak up." Jamie's heart lifted. "Why now? Why come to me?" "Because you've stood your ground," he said, "and because we need someone brave enough to lead the charge." Jamie swallowed hard. The idea was overwhelming, but also invigorating. Maybe this was their chance to turn things around, not just for themselves, but for the whole community. Over. The next few days, Mr. Henderson helped Jamie gather support. They met quietly with neighbors, shared concerns, and planned strategies. The mood in the neighborhood began to shift from fear to cautious optimism. Meanwhile, Karen's visits became more frequent and aggressive. She showed up unannounced, citing new complaints, digging for any excuse to escalate the conflict. But Jamie wasn't alone anymore. Neighbors began standing up too, refusing to tolerate Karen's overreach. One evening, as Jamie was closing the gate, Karen appeared, arms folded, ready for another confrontation. "I'm warning you, Jamie," she said coldly. "This ends soon. The HOA has eyes everywhere." Before Jamie could respond, Mr. Henderson stepped forward, his voice firm. "Karen, enough. This neighborhood deserves peace, not constant fear." Karen's eyes flickered with surprise, but quickly masked it with disdain. "This isn't over," she hissed, turning on her heel. Jamie watched as Karen disappeared down the street, feeling a new sense of hope rising. The fight was far from finished, but with allies by their side, they were stronger than ever. As the night settled, Jamie looked out at the backyard, the muddy pool, the now calm pigs, and knew one thing for certain. They would never let Karen's tyranny win. The battle for the neighborhood's soul was on, and Jamie was ready to lead the charge. The sun was setting as Jamie stood on the porch, the evening breeze carrying the faint sounds of the neighborhood settling down after another tense day. The pigs snorted softly in the yard, content now, as if sensing the calm after a storm. Jamie's phone buzzed again, an unknown number. Tentatively, they answered. "Jamie, it's Karen." The voice crackled with unexpected softness. We need to talk. Jamie blinked, caught off guard. After weeks of conflict, confrontation, and threats, this was a surprise. What is it? I've been reconsidering things, Karen admitted. Maybe I've been too harsh. The board, the neighbors. I've been acting like the sole judge of what's right. I didn't see the bigger picture. Jamie leaned back, skeptical but curious. What bigger picture? Karen sighed. The community isn't just rules and regulations. It's people, and I lost sight of that. Jamie hesitated, then nodded. I'm listening. Karen continued. I want to make amends. I've spoken with the board, and they're willing to revisit some of the policies. Maybe even soften the enforcement, give people more freedom. Jamie's heart raced. Could this be the breakthrough they'd been waiting for? Let's meet, Karen suggested. No more letters, no more threats, just a conversation. The next day, Jamie arrived at the community center, unsure what to expect. Karen was already there, waiting with an uncharacteristic smile. They talked for hours about frustrations, misunderstandings, and the need for balance. Jamie shared their vision of a community where people could live freely but responsibly. Karen shared her fears of chaos without rules. By the end, they reached a tentative agreement. Karen would pull back on aggressive enforcement, the HOA would host community forums to gather input, and Jamie would help organize neighborhood events that embraced a spirit of fun and cooperation. As Jamie left the center, a lightness lifted from their shoulders. The fight had changed from a battle to a dialogue, and that was progress. Back home, the pigs splashed happily in the freshly cleaned pool, the muddy memories fading like a bad dream. But just as Jamie was about to close the back gate, their phone buzzed again. A new message appeared. Watch out! Not everyone's ready to forgive. Jamie's smile faltered. The real fight for the neighborhood's heart was just beginning.